So thank you for that. That's really, really helpful in kind of giving me a bit of an understanding as to where you guys are coming from and what I can do to make these sessions probably a bit more tailored to where you want to be at the end of this. I think what's really important is you can, specifically with HR as well, you can learn all the theory and learn all the methods and learn all the practice, but actually when it comes to doing it in real life, you have all of that as your base, and you just build on that, because everything's experience based in HR, and it's really important to be able to draw from previous experiences when trying to make well-informed decisions about other things going forward. So hopefully what I can do is kind of give you a little bit of my experience and a bit of background to show you how you might want to go forward with some of the things that you might be covering. So it's also really good to share each other's experiences with each other. That is the only way that you'll learn. And when you come on to do, if you come on to do your CIPD qualifications, you would be in a classroom environment with other HR professionals. And again, you would be sharing experiences with those as well, which is really, really useful, and absolutely the best way to learn. It's the best way I learned earlier on in my career, so definitely beneficial. So at first, I would just like to talk to you a little bit about kind of what HR actually is and where kind of it started, and perhaps some of the situations that we can find ourselves in now as a result of perhaps where HR was 20, 30 years ago. So back in, I like to start here because I think it's quite key and quite important. Kind of back in kind of the 70s, 80s, so think around kind of the miners' strikes, etc. HR was heavily driven by trade union representation, so it was pretty unheard of that you would work for a company and not be joined up with a trade union that's representative of that company, whether it be Unite that covers hundreds and hundreds of thousands of companies, or whether it just be one that's specific to your business or your field. And the miners' strikes took place between sort of 84 and 85, and around that time trade union representation was around 13 million. In 2015, trade union representation was about 6.5 million, and having kind of with consideration of the fact that the populations increased tenfold in that period of time, we're looking at a huge drop there. And what as HR representatives we'd like to sort of consider is, why might that be? Now ideally we would like to think that people feel less of a need to join trade unions because they feel as though, as the years have gone on, they can be much fairly treated by their own business, and that their own business isn't out to get them or out to pay them below what they should be, and all of that. And over the years we've seen the introduction of minimum wage and lots of legislation that has made it so that businesses have rules to kind of abide by now, whereas perhaps they didn't in those days. But I think it's really key to understand that trade union representation is so much lower than it used to be. But that also shows an understanding of where HR was in those days. And I think back in those days it was much more about saying no, kind of limiting salaries, limiting progression, limiting wages and directions that people could go in. You'd come in, you'd do a job, you're there to do that. If you progress to manager, fine, but if you don't, there's no kind of active investment or active pursuing of succession planning and things like that. Whereas now we are much more focused on being a bit more flexible, making work a bit more of a lifestyle, so that it will mould around your life commitments and things that you might have going on, and a bit more about saying yes, really. And I think that's something that, particularly in my business, the motto that we go with is about, okay, if you ask us to do something for you, how can we accommodate that? And if we can't, is there anything we can do instead of that might be a bit of a compromise? I think that's very different to where things used to be.